I'll go ahead and add an item for human subjects. One of the things to note, especially about things where there are future modules coming online with KC, like IRB and IACUC, until those items are available, they can be added here in the special review panel. Once, like IRB, for instance, is online and integrated with proposal, you would actually be able to perform a lookup against the protocol ID so that you're pulling back a real protocol number, not just one that's entered in and may have typos or may not even be the right one for this proposal. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I'm going to say that I haven't yet applied. And it does perform a few validations against these dates, like the expiration date can't be before the approval date and things like that. But you can put that information in. You can add an exemption number, like in the case of an NIH proposal. You can add an exemption number for human subjects, and you can just basically add a line that this is one of the items for research compliance. And you can add as many as you need to for the different scenarios of special review might be required. You do have some options here. You can decide to route these things to the appropriate office for review if that makes sense, or it can just be something that you can look at later on when the award comes in, and you can then make sure that all the appropriate approvals are there before the work gets started. There are a few different ways to handle how special review is used on your campus. The next page over is custom data. This is a place where a school can add data elements that are not collected elsewhere in the application. And you'll see here that there are a few different groups that we're using for testing. And what these groups really show you is basically the way one school does this. Some of these required fields come out of the way MIT routes proposals using Coeus right now. But what a school can do is add these tabs, or what we call groups, and can add individual data elements to the groups. And you can make them required or not required. So in the case here of graduate student count, it is required in order to route the proposal. But here with the project details, these couple of fields are not. So you have a few options for grouping items together and for making your users put them in when they route a proposal. The next page is abstracts and attachments. This is where you can add all of the files that are related to the proposal, both for grants.gov and non-grants.gov submissions. For a grants.gov submission, these of course would be submitted with the proposal, would be part of the XML stream in the system-to-system submission. With a non-grants.gov proposal, this would just be a way of having a complete file copy of the proposal archived with all of the attachments, including the abstracts and narratives and budget justifications and all the different files that might be required for that proposal. There are 5 different tabs in proposal attachments, and most of them are pretty self-explanatory. Like proposal attachments here gives you a long list of the kinds of things that might be required for a submission. And all you really need to do is select one. I'll go ahead and select this one. You can add a file from your hard drive. You can add information about the contact name of the person who's working on this file if it's relevant. Occasionally, if there's something wrong with a file when this proposal is being reviewed, it might be nice to know who to call or email if something's going on. One of the things it also does is allow you to select the status of the attachment to complete or incomplete. And you can just ignore these other two. This is a leftover from testing. And what that really means is if you set it to complete, when you perform a validation to finally submit the proposal into routing, it'll generate an error if any of them are marked not complete, so that you can go back and fix those and make sure it's the right file. But setting it as incomplete is basically a way of adding it as a placeholder to know that you need to come back and look at it later to make sure the file is done and you've got the most recent version uploaded. Once you've uploaded a file, it adds it in a panel down here with the file name that you gave it, who uploaded it and when, the status, complete or incomplete. And it also changes the number here so you know how many attachments you have. One of the really nice things about proposal attachments is that they are something that can be changed once the proposal is submitted into routing. So let's say that I'm done with this proposal, I've done all the pieces of it, I'm ready for it to go into routing so it can be approved by the other investigators, the department heads and deans and sponsored projects. But I don't have to be finished with my narrative at this point. I don't have to be done with any of the technical parts of the proposal, even once it's being submitted into routing. So what I can do is create a placeholder, like for this intro to the application, or a placeholder for any one of these files. and I can actually update that while it's still being routed. And the people who are in the approval chain will get an email saying that that's what changed, but it doesn't stop routing. It doesn't start routing all over again. It allows the person to make sure they've got the most recent files, attached to the proposal before it gets submitted. In the case of the grants.gov proposal, they can make those changes right up to the point that it's ready to submit to grants.gov, and whoever has that authority at your school is actually going to click the submit button to get it off to the grants.gov portal. And in the case of a non-grants.gov proposal, they can make those changes at any point up to very final approval by the last person in the approval chain. Personnel attachments differ in that these are ones related just to the people on the proposal, so things like the biosketch and the current and pending support. It'll bring forward a list of the key persons that I have already added, and it allows me to add different files for them, current and pending support, commitment letters, whatever I need to add for this particular person. It will generate an error if I try to, for instance, add more than one biosketch for this specific person, but it'll allow me to add one of each of those kinds of attachments for each key person listed on the proposal. Internal attachments are attachments that don't actually get submitted to the sponsor. In the case of a grants.gov proposal, these are just stored with the proposal and are for the institution's use, whether it be something like cost-sharing letters or approvals, maybe letters from outside parties in support of the application that won't necessarily go to the sponsor. But this is just a way to store these files with the proposal without them being transmitted with the grants.gov proposal. And in case of a non-grants.gov proposal, again, you can store it with the proposal. And each of these attachments works the same in that you select the attachment type, upload a file, and it'll give you information about who uploaded the file and when. So if I add another file here, it's just showing what I forget to do, like adding a description. So it'll give the timestamp and the name of the person. This is the name of the person I'm logged in under. It basically allows you to show the description, any notes about the file, what the file is, allows you to review it, replace it with something else, and delete it. The same is true up here in the proposal files, has those same buttons, and it also has something called view and edit rights. And I'll bring up that window here. Right now, this person that I'm logged in is the only person who has access to this proposal to create it. But once we get to the permissions tab, you'll see that you can add additional people to work on the proposal, and you can restrict their access to a number of different areas. In the case of the attachments and the narrative documents, you can actually make it so that people can, read the files, which means read and modify, which means they can look at them and make changes to them. Or you can have them have not any access to them at all, so that they might be able to see the file name, but they wouldn't be able to open the file or make any changes, including deleting it and replacing it with another. And that's true of all attachments on this page. Last but not least is a place where you can add notes about the document itself, anything that might be relevant to routing or that you want to store with the proposal. The next page is the questions page. And this is where a bunch of different yes-no type questions that are related to the proposal are stored. This is most useful for grants.gov proposals. You'll see the list of test questions we have here that have things like the NSF beginning investigator, NIH new investigator type questions. These all map directly to a place in the grants.gov form schema where it actually fills in that place on the form. So if I were to generate the PDF that you saw earlier, the little bubble would be filled in the right place based on the answer to this question. This is also a place where you can add additional yes/no questions for your school. And there's a huge list here for testing. Your list wouldn't necessarily be that long. But you can also, there are a couple of different things you can do with these yes/no questions. You can require that it be a yes/no answer or a yes/no NA answer. You can also require that there is a specific